Y'all, welcome to Only Football Week 16 breakdowns. We're going to be talking about who clinched, who didn't, what's at stake. The stakes going to get any higher. Join us for Only Football Week 16 edition. All right. welcome. Just giving some time. We'll do the 30-second countdown and get it going. Just trying to make sure technology-wise everything's squared away and give some people time to jump in here. All right, what is going on? This is the Only Football Podcast, Week 16 edition. We're going to be breaking down some of the games that we saw take place. We're going to be talking about two teams that were able to clinch. The Baltimore Ravens clinched with a win, and we also had the Bengals clinch when the Jets lost on Thursday night to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who look really tough right now. So let's get right into it. The first team that I mentioned was Baltimore. They had to win, and they were able to do so. So the Baltimore Ravens played the Atlanta Falcons, and the Ravens are 10-5 on the season. And I know they probably don't seem like they have that well of a record, but it's now 3 wins in their last 4 games that they have been able to grind it out. And in every one of those games, they haven't been able to pass the 17-point mark. So these have been low-scoring games, and really just the defense was able to force turnovers and just do barely enough, right? I know the Falcons aren't a really great team, but the Ravens have been able to do enough to get the job done. And that's all that they're really asking a backup quarterback to do, because eventually Lamar Jackson's going to come back into this game. And I want to remind you, we in sports, especially as fans, we take what's ever happened in the last 4 weeks, and we have a tendency to just kind of run off of that. Now, I want to remind you, because I'm having a little bit of football amnesia right now when I think about the Baltimore Ravens. My initial reaction to the Baltimore Ravens making the playoffs, I'm not going to lie to you, it was, who cares? They're going to be one and done anyway. They're not good enough on offense. They have no firepower. They can't play with the Bills. They can't play with the Chiefs and the Bengals. But although that may be true, what we really have to do here is we have to remember the Ravens when they had Lamar Jackson, right? Because they're going to get Lamar Jackson back. So we need to remember what this Ravens team was with Lamar Jackson. They scored, I'm just going to mention the amount of points they scored with Lamar Jackson starting from week 1. 24, 38, 37, 20, 19, 20, 23, 27, 27, 27, and then 3. And after that, the Broncos game, we didn't see Lamar Jackson in that game. And they scored 9, 16, 3, and 17. So the Ravens offense was able to beat the Broncos, only scoring 10 points. Probably the only team that could have won scoring that little. Then they are able to get a 2-point win over the Steelers, 16-14. And then last week, we saw the Ravens and the Browns play, and the Ravens only got 3 points. And that was our moment. We were like, man, it feels like it's been a month since we saw the Ravens score, more than 17 points. Well, it has been. It has been more than a month since we've seen the Ravens score more than 17 points. However, Lamar Jackson only scored less than 17 points one time the entire Ravens season. So, look, you have questions about the offense. I do too. But the fact of the matter is, it's a completely different team when Lamar Jackson is on the field. And the fact that, I don't know, who knows? I mean, maybe Lamar Jackson's healthy right now. But at a 10-5 record, they're like, hey, let's just, keep our cards close to the chest and go into the postseason with a healthy Lamar Jackson, like healthier than all the other quarterbacks taking a week 18 off, right? Lamar Jackson hasn't played football since they played the Broncos. We're going on 5 weeks of no football. This is a great thing for Lamar Jackson if he's fully healthy, right? I'm speculating, but I have just a gut feeling that if the playoffs were riding on, last week's game, we would have saw Lamar Jackson. So I'm just throwing that out there. This is our job as a football podcast, is to keep pitching these kinds of things to you guys to remember about the Ravens, because look, last 4 weeks, look, it's been tough, right? We see the Ravens and they can't even score 17. That's not who the Ravens have been all season. There's a reason they're 10-5 right now, and it's because Lamar Jackson's been their quarterback. Now, I still don't think that they can beat Cincinnati, Buffalo, or Kansas City. Like, if I had to pick right now, I wouldn't pick Baltimore. But my initial gut of, they're going to get just blown out. If Lamar Jackson's healthy and Baltimore plays, a solid game, they've already played Buffalo, and we saw that game. They literally threw it away at the end. They had Buffalo beaten, I think, by 2 or 3 possessions. And, I think it was 20-0 or 17-0 in, I think, by the end of this first quarter, or maybe halfway into the second. And then the Bills got 23 unanswered or something along those lines, right? They beat the Bengals the week after that. The Bengals are the team that, we're saying, oh, well, could they even beat the Bengals? They already did it. They already beat the Bengals. And you can make an argument that the Bengals are better now. It doesn't matter. They had the Bengals number earlier this year. They beat the Jets when the season started, and the Jets went on a huge win streak. I think they were 7-1. Their only loss came to this Ravens team, and it wasn't particularly close. It was 24-9. So these are things that I'm keeping in mind as we head into playoff football. Okay, Atlanta not able to get the job done, and with the Panthers being able to win against Detroit, we'll get to that in our next game that we're about to get into. Atlanta's out of the playoff picture. Carolina and Tampa Bay are currently going at it right now. I mean, technically, I think, one of them has to win because they're playing each other. So they both can't lose their last 2 games because they're playing each other next week, Tampa Bay and Carolina. So Atlanta's out. Baltimore gets another win on the record, and I'm not going to get into next week games because that's tomorrow's episode, but Baltimore, I would just pump the brakes on ruling them out. They may not be a favorite, but they should be maybe 3 to 4 point underdogs. This is not a 7 to 10 point spread or 10 point underdog. I don't believe that. Not with Lamar Jackson healthy. And that's something that I needed to remind myself. So we got some people in the chat. Sorry, didn't grab that. Legendary said head coach too. Yeah, you talk about a head coach. Doesn't get much better than Harbaugh. I mean, he's been consistently, I really can respect a good head coach because I know since losing Manning how difficult it is to find one. Lamar to the Colts, who knows? I mean, hey, the Ravens are having a hard time paying the guy. Maybe the Colts and the Colts' new head coach, I think the Colts are just a quarterback like Lamar away from making a deep run. Yo, what's good from Tyler Fink? Thank you for joining us. Week 16 breakdown review. Packers are making the playoffs. Let's go. So we got some pumped cheesehead fans in the chat. But yeah, long story short, don't sleep on Baltimore. Lamar's coming back. Our next game, we have the Detroit Lions, who were perhaps the hottest team in the NFC, kind of matching the Bengals of the AFC. Their defense was able to move all the way up to playing at a 15th ranked level, while their offense was number 3 in scoring. So the defense, when they were 31st, like they spent the whole first 7-8 weeks of the season being 31st, they were getting into these just huge shootouts and they were losing games like 45-48. I mean, it was ridiculous. You saw the Seattle-Detroit game and you were like, how did those teams score that many points, right? It was confusing. Well, Detroit actually has a good offense. It took some time for me to really realize that. And it was just only if their defense could play even just middle, they would start winning games. And that's exactly what their defense did. And Detroit just started winning, stacking dubs over and over and over. And I had no reason really to believe that Carolina was going to win. Now, I admit when I'm wrong. I heard chatter about Carolina, being at home. Detroit definitely plays a lot better in a dome and on turf and all that. I get it. But I just thought Detroit had a really good momentum going, and I thought they could carry that into Carolina. I couldn't have been further from the truth. I mean, that game was not as close as the score says. So Panthers scored 37 points, so it seems like the defense kind of takes a step back and kind of goes back into their early season form, and the Lions on offense couldn't really get anything going. The Panthers really, it's no surprise. They're dominating with their rushing attack. And like, it's been an improbable season. It's been an improbable year for them. But somehow, with this rushing attack, it's keeping it all alive. And the ironic twist of it is this is happening after CMC. I couldn't imagine if they still had CMC with this kind of new philosophy of just running the ball over and over and over. I think maybe, they would already be past Tampa Bay if they had held on to CMC. So Chuba Hubbard is a pretty good replacement. Nobody's going to be able to fill the shoes of CMC, but he definitely set the tone. He had a 30-yard run on the first play of the game, I believe. So just from the get-go, the Panthers really just kind of asserted their will on Detroit. Detroit couldn't do anything to stop the run. I mean, seemed like Detroit knew they were going to run. The Panthers lined up like they were going to run, and they just continued to run. I believe the team's previous record was 299 total rushing yards in a game. So Foreman had 165 in a TD, and Hubbard had 125. So 265, 75, 85, 90. So 190 yards on the ground. I mean, that is just ridiculous, right? The Lions just get down early in this game and they're not able to climb out of their hole. They tried. I saw them going for it a couple times on fourth down. Jared Goff has one of the great things that he's been doing is he hasn't been turning the ball over. He's been holding onto the ball. He's been playing kind of smart football, and that's really been working. Now, Jared Goff, he's not Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, but he's been playing at a top 10 level, and he's been one of those guys that just hasn't been aggressive really with the ball, even though they're scoring so many points. It doesn't translate into interceptions. It seems that he's always making safe decisions. And I think he had a streak of 0 turnovers over the last 6 games. Yeah. 6 games with 0 turnovers. That's pretty damn good. And that definitely did not carry into this game. The Panthers were able to force turnovers. Jared Goff had a lost fumble on a snap. And I mean, this was just, I think if you watched HBO Hard Knocks, if you saw, there's a part where Dan Campbell comes in and he stands up and he has chalk all over his pants and he starts going like this. And he says, that's what we have to do. Last season, obviously they went 1-16, or maybe 2-15. I don't remember. It was really bad. And he was like, that's what we have to do. We have to dust this chalk off of our pants. We got to get this, last season as far away from us as possible. Let the old be old, make room for the new wineskin because there's a new year ahead of us. Well, they're going to have to do that again because it is very easy. This is probably a really emotional, fragile team. I mean, you think about a team that's been on a roller coaster. Now, they have been at a point in the season where they were 1-7, and then they became one of the hottest teams in the league. So you talk about the lowest lows and the highest highs. You want to make sure that this team does not get back into their old ways because of this loss. You don't want to see any kind of regression. Now is the time to get more aggressive and to do all those things that you were doing right in the 7 games, and don't doubt yourself. Detroit, you guys probably agree with me. Detroit is most people's favorite team that don't have a team to cheer for. At this point of the year, people are like, everybody I talk to is like, oh, I want to see Detroit get in because it's a great story. I want to see Green Bay get in, so I'm really hoping that the Giants, I think they have to lose the rest of their games, but there's so many scenarios the Giants can get in. There's 7 scenarios for them this week. So most likely, if you want Green Bay in, Detroit's going to have to come out because Packers and Detroit play Week 18. But, however, Carolina is going to play Tampa Bay. And the way they played Detroit, I have no reason to believe they won't beat Tampa Bay. I'm still going to pick Tampa Bay because I'm going to pick Tom Brady over and over and over until I'm proved wrong to the end of the season, right? Because I have to believe Tom Brady will find a way to get into the playoffs because he's done it my whole life. So until he proves me otherwise, I understand it was really bad. If you watched the Tampa Bay Arizona game with us and we live streamed, Arizona is a very bad team. Tampa had no business fooling around with them. Carolina is taking care of business. I have no reason to believe Carolina won't put the smackdown on Tom Brady and end up winning the division. But I'm still going to roll with Tampa. But not going into those predictions. Let's move on to Buffalo at Chicago. Buffalo is another team that has been playing really impressive. And if you haven't been paying attention, because this kind of happens sometimes when a team wins a lot, they did go through a little turbulence in the middle of the season, I would say, around Thanksgiving. They were able to get a 3-point win over Detroit to kind of get, the ball rolling again. But how many? I believe they've won six games in a row at this point. Haven't lost since the Thanksgiving game or the week before Thanksgiving. So now the Bills are getting hot again, but I was impressed with the Bills finally able to run the ball. Josh Allen couldn't generate much through the air. It was cold as balls. It was like icicles on your nutsack cold. There was wind blowing. It's the windy city of Chicago, so you got wind chill. It's if you've ever been in that kind of climate, it is very hard to throw a football, and the football turns into a rock. It transforms from a pigskin into a rock. And let me make sure this is plugged in really quick. Sorry, this computer just notified me. It is extremely hard to play in those kinds of conditions. So, sorry guys, I just want to make sure this doesn't die on me. Here we go. And we're all set. So, Josh Allen, it was no surprise that he wasn't able to throw the ball. I was not surprised by it at all. But they haven't really been able to run the ball through the entire season. Singletary and James Cook, Dalvin Cook's brother, they've been like serviceable. Like I think about when the Broncos had Peyton Manning in 2013, and rest in peace, Ronnie Hillman, but he was no Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination, but they were so good at receiver, and Manning's throwing 55 touchdowns in a year that we didn't need to be great at running back. We just needed to have one back there that we could toss the ball to every once in a while so they don't know we're always passing it. That's kind of how Buffalo's felt for most of this year. Buffalo is a passing team, pass first. I'm never surprised when they pass on first down. But I never really saw Singletary and Cook able to kind of go into that next level of running back where it's like, hey, maybe these guys are more than serviceable. Maybe these guys are starting to get something rolling here. Because they both just totally scorched the Bears. They were running through holes. You got to credit the offensive line. There was holes open that were just, I mean, I could have ran through them. Cook had 11 carries, 99 yards, and a touchdown. Singletary had 106 yards. So you have two running backs basically hitting 100 yards on the ground. This was a big running week with the weather, but Bills haven't been able to do that, and that is a recipe for playoff football. Now, they did it against the Bears. The Bears are, already disqualified from the playoffs. Will they be able to do it against some of the other teams? Well, I think this is a great confidence builder going forward because let's talk about the other teams. Kansas City, they're not known for their defense. Their actually biggest vulnerability is on defense. A lot of young guys that they're plugging in. You see them messing around with the Texans, and you see the Denver Broncos, the worst offense in the NFL, able to score 21 unanswered to make it 21-27 after it was 27-0. That stuff, is cute when you're playing these bad teams, but if you get a team that really knows how to run the football, like the Eagles, oh my gosh, the Eagles, the 49ers, these are all teams I think can beat the Chiefs personally. Really quick, I'm going to hit some of these. Legendary said, "My dream of Dallas versus KC has another shot this year." Absolutely. That does have, I wouldn't be, I mean, it's not my pick by any means, but those are two teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Foreman, 130 plus yards, going to be hard to beat. D'Angelo and Stewart's combo. Yeah, man. Jonathan Stewart was a monster. He was the running back for Super Bowl 50. He has so many picks. Yeah, drafting Cook for sure. Next year, they traded Zach Moss mid-season. Cook has been cooking last monthish. Yeah, so that's exactly what I'm saying. You look at this team, and it seems like they're able to kind of build off this moving forward. And if Buffalo figures out how to run the football, stand the F by, because we're all in a little bit of trouble if Buffalo figures out how to run the ball. I mean, that has been their one weakness. I mean, I know the Von Miller with the pass rush is kind of iffy now. They don't have maybe the greatest pass rush, but their defense is good. I mean, it's better than Kansas City. There was a point in the year where they had the first scoring defense by like week 6. They were number one in offense and defense. So I'm not worried about the defense. I've always been worried about running the ball, and the fact that they were able to do that, you'll find out later, they jumped on my power rankings from last week. So New Orleans at Cleveland. This was a game that when you saw it, you were just thinking, don't freaking touch it. Don't think about touching it, especially if you're betting. Don't bet on this game. It doesn't look good. It looks ugly. It's in Cleveland, but New Orleans might be a little bit better, but who knows what Saints are going to show up. Deshaun Watson had a good last drive in his last game, but he's been pretty bad for the most part. So there was just so many reasons to not touch it.
God gave us a great big apple, see? And he said, don't touch it. He didn't say touch it once in a while. He didn't say take a nibble when you're hungry. He said, don't touch it.
So what ended up happening in this game? Well, the Saints were gonna go on to win this game. If you saw it, it was a really close game, the entire time, low scoring, really cold. Uh, Cleveland fans stuck around this whole time. It was a packed stadium. Shout out to, what do they call themselves? The Dog Pound. But New Orleans was gonna be able to leave the Dog Pound with the W, and I can't even say that it's because of their defense, but if you watch that last drive, there were 2 plays that the ball was dropped. Deshaun Watson, they were down a touchdown. They were able to have 2 passing plays to take them all the way to the 19-yard line. So now they're in the red zone, um, limited amount of time on the clock. I believe it was down to like 20 to 30 seconds. Um, and he hit 2 receivers in the end zone. And Njoku had it in his hands, he just couldn't hold on to the ball. I told you it's a rock when it's that cold, and that's how that one ended. And I really think maybe he's able to bring that one down. Who knows what happens in overtime with how this could go either way. So that's what happened. Look, New Orleans trying to stay involved in stuff. Like I said, it's going to be Carolina or Tampa. Cleveland was already a very, very, very slim to none margin, maybe a 1% chance. Now we can move on from that fantasy. That game was, I would say, it was a good game, but it was also one of the only games that didn't have real implications attached to it. All right, so we got the Seattle Seahawks. Uh, how do you still have a Rust Cup? We'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll talk about that. Um, so because I'm a 'cause look, you can't just he said Broncos country, let's ride. And if you've ever heard the term ride or die, the whole thing is you don't just ride when it's good. Like if you're riding to the death of you, then that's what you're doing. Like there's no like you can't get off the ride. Like we already said, let's ride. We're gonna freaking ride. I don't care if we suck every year. We're gonna ride a really shitty ride, but we're gonna be in it. We're gonna be strapped up. You can bet your bottom dollar we're gonna be riding, even if we're going nowhere. We'll get to that. Seattle, Kansas City. Kansas City, I predicted was gonna have a big bounce back game after just a couple subpar performances, but I also told Rick they hadn't played at home in 4 weeks straight. So 4 straight, a whole month on the road. I expected it to start taking its toll, and it did against the Texans, and they were still able to get a win, but I thought, "Hey, they're gonna come home, they're gonna play a lot better." And did you see the play that Patrick Mahomes had where he got tackled, but somehow he's able to, like, keep his body afloat, almost as if he is, one of those jets that can just, stay stagnant, like, what do they call them? Harriers? They just are able to stay still. That's what it looked like Mahomes did, and I hate how special he is because he's, in the Chiefs and a rival, and we've never beaten him since he became the starting quarterback, but it is miraculous to watch him week in and week out just do amazing things, so, um, the Seahawks, they wasted a good day from Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker finally kinda he had a couple injuries, but he was solid since the day he got his first start. He broke 100 yards on the ground, but Kansas City's defense was able to really step up. Um, yeah, I mean, if you looked at the game or even watched the highlights, you'll notice that Kenneth Walker was pretty much most of Seattle's yards, and Seattle never had any chance really of winning this game. You see a final score sometimes 24-10, and it's like, "Yeah, maybe it was close for a little bit." Check out this stat right here. Seattle never had more than a 23% chance of winning in this game. 23% chance. I mean, that means they were playing from behind the entire game. Kansas City, their defense, like I said, I have all those questions about them. Well, they made a late season surge against the Seahawks. The Seahawks are also a team that's declining, so you got to take it and take it with a grain of sand, or is it a grain of salt? No, sand, sand. Take it with a grain of sand. Kansas City, their defense stepped up against Seattle. That's fine. Let's see if they can step up against some of these better teams. But the Chiefs still playing for that first seed, and we're going to talk about clinching scenarios after the games. But everything the Chiefs want to do, they still have something to play for. And now they're going to be playing the Broncos at home again, a game that they really have no business losing. And meanwhile, Buffalo has a 1 game lead on Cincinnati, and they're going to play on Monday night. So, I mean, things are shaping up. If Cincinnati can win, you may be looking at it's either, two of these teams are going to be fighting for the first seed in Week 18. So even if I don't even know if there's going to be resting between two of those three teams: Chiefs, Bills, or Bengals. If the Bengals lose on Monday night, Chiefs and Bills will probably both be playing their starters in order to secure home field or try to get the first seed. So that's what's going on with Kansas City. Let's move on to the New York Giants. They would play. Let me check on the chat really quick. At how do you spell it? Salt, grain of salt. Is it grain of salt? I thought it was a grain of sand because sand is in grains, but I really, when you think about it, so is salt. So I guess it could be either. I mean, um, all right. So let's talk about the Minnesota game. Minnesota at home. I picked Minnesota. Okay. Now let me propose a question to you, the fans of football, and I'm going to let you think about it for a second. Hey, Aaron, it's either. Um, do you think that the ability to win 12 games? So remember, Minnesota's 12-0 in one possession games. So if there was a last second field goal out of the 12 times it happened, that means Minnesota was the one getting the game winning kick 12 times. So is there something to be said for being able to win close games? Because you think about the playoffs and you're like, that's what the playoffs are going to be, a lot of close games. You need to know how to win those games. Minnesota was in the most close games last year, um, out of any team. And they had a very bad record. And my offseason prediction was literally they're gonna be in these same close games, but I think this year they're gonna find ways to win all of them. I mean, I'll go back and cut it and clip it. Here's the point, it's not to pat myself on the back for the prediction. I wanna ask you this, is this even a good thing? Is it a good thing that Minnesota is playing a lot of close games? Because you win the most close games, it just means you played in usually it means you played in the most close games, which means you never dominated anybody for the most part. I mean, it's week 17 coming up. There's been 16 games played. 12 of them have been one possession games, which means they've only won 4 games. Well, and they have the losses too. So really, they've only won 2 games by more than one score. To me, that doesn't seem like a good recipe for the playoffs necessarily when you look at the opponents Minnesota's played. Um, I just I like to see once in a while when I'm talking about my Super Bowl favorite, it's a team that I could step away to go grab something at the gas station and come back and the score is, 35-7. Just the firepower, you think about the Golden State Warriors with, when they played the Cavs in the finals, and it was like you would have a 20-point lead, but if you went to the bathroom and came back, Golden State might have made it a tie game at that point. Firepower. I know they have Justin Jefferson and he's doing historical things, but I don't their defense kinda just doesn't help the firepower of the offense because they give up a touchdown just as fast as they get a touchdown. So, when I think about it, it just seems like it all kinda evens out to a competitive football team, but not a football team that is going to beat teams like San Francisco or like Philadelphia. Um, I mean, who knows? We got Green Bay, Minnesota this week. The Packers are playing a lot better. Maybe they can't even beat the Packers at this point in the season. So we'll find out. But I mean, maybe Minnesota wins a wild card game, against like the Giants. 'Cause they just barely beat the Giants, but the Giants would be a wild card team if they win this week. So they might rematch. And, maybe I could see the same thing happening, a last second field goal to win the game, kind of non-impressive against a Giants team that is clearly a tier underneath the best of the best. But once it gets, once, what do they call it? Once it gets real, once they're playing Philadelphia on the road in Philly with Meek Mill doing the halftime show, and that crowd and that energy and Jalen Hurts, I don't even think it's gonna be competitive potentially. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. So why do you think it's going so who do you think is gonna play in the wild card round? Oh, you answered. I just did, naturally. Alright, so Cincinnati at New England. Cincinnati was my number 2 team on the power rankings last week. We do our top 5 every week, and last week, um, I had Cincinnati all the way up at 2 while Rick didn't have I think Cincinnati, where were they at? I think they were at number 5. Yeah, I freaked out because they were the first team he picked, and I just couldn't believe it because the Bengals, I think, are the hottest team right now. They've won 7 or 8 in a row. Let's see. The last time they lost was against the Browns on Halloween. So, their last loss came when, we were still trick or treating. The Bengals, that's the last time they've lost. Since then, they've scored 42, 37, 20, 27, 23, 34. We saw them come back against the Buccaneers when it was 17-0 to score 34 unanswered points. I mean, this is a team that's the firepower, folks. That's the firepower I'm talking about. They're about to play Buffalo. We've already seen them beat the Chiefs. I just I like what I see out of Buffalo. And then New England trying to stay alive for the playoffs almost comes back in this game. If you watch the game, there was a point in the game, I think it was man, it was bad. It was like 22, I think it was 22 to 0 to be completely honest. And then they were able to get a touchdown, the Patriots, and then they go for 2, and then they get another touchdown. Then I think they go for 2 again. That's why you have this wonky score, 22-18, because I guess you had probably a touchdown, a two-point conversion, a touchdown, a failed two-point conversion, and a field goal. Whatever the case is, the Patriots had a chance at a comeback victory after being down that many points, um, and it's because Joe Burrow threw a pick six. But I'm not gonna get too down on the Bengals because if you watch that play, there was a clear miscommunication between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. They were not on the same page, and the reason I forgive those kind of interceptions easier is because that's something you can go back and those are mental errors, right? If I'm seeing actual physical limitations on the field, like, "Oh my gosh, he's throwing a lot of interceptions because he doesn't have arm strength." He's underthrowing everybody. Those are things I get concerned about. You throw 1 pick six because, you know, uh, not just any receiver, you know, arguably a top 5 receiver in the NFL, top 7, just was on a different page than you. Like, those are things you can fix. 2 guys, way too talented to be concerned about the Bengals letting the Patriots back in the game, because if all you did was look at the bottom of the TV and see, "Oh my gosh, the Patriots, 8, the Patriots, right? You're like, "Oh, the Bengals are coming back," but you need to really read the story to understand the whys and the how it happened, and it's really just this pick six, and it was just one bad play, so the Bengals continue to win. They continue their win streak, and who's gonna win between them and Buffalo, we're gonna talk about that tomorrow, but that is already I mean, it's just an amazing gift for a real, like, football fan because that is potentially your AFC Championship game that we get to watch. And if it would have shaped up any different way where the Bengals played the Chiefs and the Chiefs won and then the Chiefs and Buffalo play in the AFC Championship, we already saw the Bengals play the Bills, in week 17. So this is really, really cool. I'm excited. Probably the most excited I've been for a game, just a regular game that doesn't involve my team in a while, because this is really kind of where you separate the men from the boys. This is the game where the truth will reveal itself on national TV in front of the entire country on ESPN. So I'm excited for that game. That is going to be potentially the game of the year. We've had some good ones, but that is definitely one to look forward to. Cincinnati, I'm not worried about it. They clinch a playoff spot, and they make an argument to be one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL currently. Our next game was Houston. Let me check that chat really quick. Okay. Oh, you answered. Are they due for a loss? Due for a loss. The Bengals, I don't think are due for a loss, because of the way they're winning. They're not like when I said Minnesota was due for a loss, it's because they were playing so many close games. I said eventually this is gonna turn on them, and it's gonna go the other way. A fumble is gonna bounce the other team's way. Well, you look at Cincinnati, and they are beating every team, and it's not even close. So I have no reason to believe something is gonna turn around and that they're due for a loss. Not a team that's dominating. 49ers aren't due for a loss. Just because they're winning a lot doesn't mean that they have to lose, right? The Patriots went 16-0 with Randy Moss and Tom Brady. So you could have said they were due for a loss for 6, 7 whole weeks, and then it never happened. So, but they were due for a loss in the Super Bowl. All right, spoiled the 19-0 perfect season. Eli Manning did that. All right, so Washington at San Francisco. Colin Cowherd, he has a professional bettor that comes on in Las Vegas. He's made it to the top, like, 5 finalists in NFL betting for, like, 5 years in a row. He's, like, wildly popular, very well known and respected, and he was going on this tangent. Well, basically how this show starts is Colin says a game like this. He goes, "Washington at San Francisco. Tell me if I'm wrong," and then he goes on this tangent of what he thinks what will happen, and then he says sharp or square. Sharp means you're right on the money, like, you're perfect, and then square means, like, no, you're crazy. So Colin goes on this tangent about how Washington's gonna play San Francisco. It's gonna be a close, tight ball game, and he goes sharp or square, and this professional bettor goes sharp, and he's like, "Yeah, I think, Brock Purdy, there's more film on him because he's been playing multiple games," and, he just kinda says, "Oh, they're traveling," Man, I watched that whole entire thing, and I was like, "This is the exact reason I have trust issues with television." It's like, I really believe that they get, like, some kind of payout to try to, like, boost the books for Washington. Because I searched and searched and searched, and I couldn't find one good reason why I should take the Commanders to even be close against the San Francisco team that might be the best team in the NFL right now. Nick Bosa is definitely the best defensive player in the NFL, and he locked that up. That was a whole debate that lasted 3 weeks. So I'm not worried about that. We were talking about if it's gonna be Micah Parsons or Nick Bosa. I have no questions anymore about who it's gonna be. So the San Francisco 49ers scored 37 points. Now, Brock Purdy is a good quarterback, period. It's not hype. It's not a fluke anymore. I don't care if we see some kind of regression next week. He's already done enough. They literally asked him with that defense that they have and the weapons, CMC and Ayuk and, Deebo Samuel, they literally asked Brock Purdy, "Look, just don't F it up. Whatever you do, just don't screw it up. If you don't make any mistakes, we'll just win by default because of our talent." And Brock Purdy was like, "Hold my beer. I'm not gonna play to not lose. You're gonna see me play to win, and I'm gonna score 56 points in my first 2 games. And then I'm gonna win another game with an exclamation mark. And then when people are still doubting who I am, and the Commanders are coming into town fighting for a playoff spot, Nick Bosa is gonna take over the game, and Brock Purdy is gonna do the same thing." He almost scored 40 points. Like, we this is unprecedented. Like, we haven't seen a 7th round pick, last pick. Like, this is the greatest story in the NFL this season, and I am including the Detroit story. This San Francisco team has an opportunity to win a Super Bowl with a player in the most important position. It's not like, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick, last round was a running back, and he's got a good ground game. The most important position, the one position that if it's not right, everything falls apart. That's the position this Mr. Irrelevant guy plays. And San Francisco, but they don't even look close to a loss since he took over. I mean, they came to Seattle, a really tough place to play. The books were saying, uh, 49ers by 2.5. I was like, "This is dumb." The 49ers are really good, and if people haven't figured it out yet, they're way too late. I don't care if Brock Purdy and the whole thing is not Big market quarterback names will always get more hype because the more television or the more an audience is there to see Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, those type of guys, there's more money in that, so they invest more videos and more, camera angles on these guys. Like, they know there's kids looking up to them and stuff like that. Brock Purdy hasn't hit that kinda stardom yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not already existing. Brock Purdy could be a really good quarterback in this league for the next 18 years, and if he comes in and just wins the Super Bowl this year, after last year, they spent the number 2 draft pick after everything they gave up to get Trey Lance, and then he goes down with the knee injury, and it turns out the guy that they drafted to be the backup to the backup is gonna be their long-term starter. It would go down as a top 5 greatest story of all time, and this is a fun story to jump on, the underdog, everybody gets a shot. They counted you out, this is just good for sports, a story like this. They'll make documentaries about this. If Brock Purdy, loses in the first round of the playoffs, it's already cemented. He's already done it. They're gonna make a documentary, and it's just an honor to be witnessing such a cool story. Let's stay in the NFC with Philadelphia at Dallas, Philly, no Jalen Hurts, so they had to go with Gardner Minshew. So when me and Rick talked about it, we were like, "Okay, Dallas is at home, we're gonna take Dallas because there's no Jalen Hurts." Well, what I wasn't expecting was Gardner Minshew to light it up. Gardner Minshew played an amazing game. I mean, let's see the final score of this one. It was, Philly, Dallas. Where'd it go? It just jumped 40-34. Dallas able to put up 40 points, and then the Eagles had 34 points. This was a high scoring game, 74 points scored, but Gardner Minshew surprised everybody. I mean, there was not a person that was not surprised, that's being honest, about how well Minshew played. And it was just really cool to see because it made you realize how good the Eagles are. That, and this is kind of the thing you could say about Brock Purdy potentially, besides if you actually watch the 49ers play. It's like when you're around talent, it brings the level of play up, the competition up. You will become your best self when you're around people that are the best at what they do. Gardner Minshew, you didn't play that well in Jacksonville, right? Now he's on this Eagles team backing up Jalen Hurts with all of these stars around him, and he looks like he should have been starting this entire season. And the same thing's happening with Brock Purdy, with, the CMCs and everyone around him. So, man, it's just so important to have talent on your team. It just brings the level of expectations up across the whole board, and that's what impressed me about Philly. Defensively, I have questions about them giving up 40 points. Um, I'm gonna let them slide though because the Eagles turned the ball over, I think 3 or 4 times, but every single one of the turnovers was not Gardner Minshew's fault. It was either a fumble, there was an interception that literally got ripped out of the hands. I forgot who, I think it was Devontae Smith maybe. I mean, it was just, "That's my ball, I want it more." I mean, it was not a bad throw or anything like that. It was, just a really incredible defensive play. So I I'm gonna say Dallas, they scored, I think, 24 points off of turnovers, so take that off the board, clean up the mistakes. Maybe Dallas would have only scored, um, you know, 27 or something like that instead of 40. So, I mean, I'm not gonna take it away from Dallas. They did what they had to do, but the fact that the Eagles can sit out, the running guy for MVP, him or Patrick Mahomes, like, tell the MVP, "Hey, you sit this one out." And the Dallas Cowboys, the team that has been winning alongside you the entire season, that has said, "Hey, when we get Dak back," because Dak wasn't in the Cowboys, he was injured for the first time they played each other. They said, "When we get Dak back, we're gonna beat you, and you're gonna know," because they were mad that the Eagles got that first win when they didn't even have their starting quarterback, and I don't know, I look at it and I think, "Man, Dallas must feel really kinda like, not that great." Like, "Okay, so here we go, going to play Philly and they don't have an MVP. This should have been a, I don't know, like 30 to, 10 game. Like, I think everybody was like, yeah, Dallas will win. Philly's not playing their best player. And if they don't turn the ball over, Philly wins this game. So it just shows you to me when I watch this game, and I know we have a Dallas fan, he mentioned in here, he wants to see a Cowboys Chiefs Super Bowl. I don't see it happening. I see an Eagles team that when they're healthy and Hurts is back on the field, they're going to, be way too much for this Cowboys team to handle, and I have my concerns about Dallas after watching them choke against the Jaguars and watching, them lose to the Packers on Sunday night when the Packers weren't playing well yet. Like, seems like every time there's a really kinda rise to the occasion moment, whether it's Dak Prescott being asked to throw the ball more than 34 times, Dallas can't find a way to win those games. Their recipe is to try to take an early lead and just control it. They don't play good catch up. I can't think of a time this season that Dallas was down, multiple possessions and somehow they came back and won it. So that is concerning. They do have, CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. That's awesome, but you know, Eagles have a couple of those. And Michael Galloway did some good stuff, I believe Gallup, but the Eagles are going to run away with this. And with a win this week, we'll get to the scenarios. They're going to be a first seed. Sunday night football was actually Saturday night football. Las Vegas at Pittsburgh. This is when we got rated by Tom Grassi the second time. Shout out to Tom Grassi. Thank you for rating and showing love to the smaller channels. We really appreciate that. We made a short and uploaded it. So if you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. Las Vegas at Pittsburgh, they were honoring the Immaculate Reception, and this game felt like it was honoring that catch by playing a game that looked like it was filmed 40 years ago. This is a low scoring, just kind of boring game. The Raiders opened up with a 14 point or a 14 play, 8-minute drive, really long and methodical, and neither team in the next 50 minutes of football would even get in the red zone. So this was just a lot of punting back and forth, not a lot of ball movement. And quite frankly, if you like kind of more action in your football games, this was a boring football game. I enjoyed it just because it was close, right? If it's going to be boring, it at least has to be close. And I was just curious. I was like, how's this whole thing gonna play out? It was one of those games that you definitely wish you could just fast forward to the last 5 minutes and just skip all the punts in the middle, because you definitely knew that that's just what was gonna continue to happen until somebody got lucky enough to end up close enough to kick a field goal. But Pittsburgh was able to get the win. We had this as a close game, but Pittsburgh getting the win at home with all the emotion and the throwbacks and the fans thought that that would be the little tiny sprinkle that would kinda, take the top over for Pittsburgh, and you could say it was. They are able to get the win. Pittsburgh's still technically alive in the playoffs, but they're not gonna make the playoffs. Green Bay at Miami. This is I was born in Wisconsin. Cheesehead family members, all Packer fans in Miami. The new hot team with Mike McDaniel is the most hipster, cool coach that we've ever seen, and their kinda own unique style and way of doing things. I had my family at this game. They live in South Florida. They were representing, wearing all their Packer gear, and this game did not disappoint. And the one thing that I was impressed by for Green Bay was that they took chances. They went for it in their own territory. I think they're in the 30-yard line. They went for it on 4th down. They were aggressive from the beginning of this game, and I this is exactly what I said. I was like, "You give me an Aaron Rodgers with nothing to lose, you don't know what you're gonna get." Like, you cannot rule out an Aaron Rodgers. He made a couple throws that were literally some of the best throws I've ever seen. There was a wheel route, and he was, like, just starting the wheel going down the sideline, and Rodgers took a huge hit, and he just launched the ball so high and so far, and I was like, "Where is that even going?" And in perfect stride on the wheel route, just right into the breadbasket. I mean, it was just some incredible stuff going on. Fans definitely got their money's worth, but Green Bay able to get that win to keep their playoff hopes alive. And not only that, with Seattle losing, with Washington losing, with Detroit losing, we covered all of those. This actually makes it all way easier for Green Bay. All you have to do is win out. Easier said than done. They got Minnesota and Detroit. Those aren't going to be easy, but they are at the frozen tundra in late December or technically early January. So I like the Packers odds there, and they need the Commanders to lose one. Now, this is what's tricky about that is that the Commanders play the Cowboys week 18. The Cowboys may be resting everybody, so and they're still gonna be playing for the playoff spot. So they're gonna be playing, their best game. But we saw the Cowboys earlier this season without Dak Prescott, and they won all their games pretty much. I think they were 5-1. So um, everyone's going to be cheering for the Cowboys that week because this week, Washington, I think they're playing like Houston or somebody like that. Like they're playing a team that they're probably going to win most likely. So, uh, great game, Green Bay. Not only are they alive, it feels like there's like a real pulse on this thing. Like Green Bay has a clear shot at the playoffs, and it's, uh it's just like a huge kinda comeback resurrection story, and I said this when I was live streaming the game. We saw what the Packers do when they're 13-3 and get a first round bye, right? They lose in the first round, they did it last year, they did it the year before. Like, maybe this is what the Packers need, is to go into the playoffs with no expectations, just barely squeaking in, and play loose, and go travel on the road and, be the spoiler team that nobody expects. Be the underdog. You've been favorited at home in Lambeau. You've been the Super Bowl pick. This isn't happening this year. Maybe that's exactly what the Packers need. Denver at LA Rams. Like, I'm not going to talk about this game a lot, but obviously Nathaniel Hackett did get fired after this game, and that is really a testament to how bad this game was. This is the worst a team has ever been beaten on Christmas in the history of the NFL. The Broncos, having given up this many points, I think in the last like 5 years or something along those lines, um, there was no reason LA should have been able to beat the Broncos like that. There are two teams that both had the same record. They were both 4-8. They were both depleted by injuries, but Denver just, I mean, they were just really, really bad. The offensive line was really bad. Russell Wilson was really bad. Our defense was atrocious. The one good thing, we hadn't given up, we were averaging like 16 points a game, and then they gave up 51. Like that, for all of the Broncos ownership group, that was a huge red flag. They said, "Hey, the fact that the defense isn't playing together anymore, and that shows that you lost the locker room." And we said this a lot when we were talking about Nathaniel Hackett. I said, "Hey, we can lose the football games, but we can't lose the locker room." We lost the football games and the locker room. Therefore, the coach gets the boot. 2 days later, some other coaches get the boot. Our special teams coordinator, our offensive coordinator, those guys get the boot. We are going to hopefully just try to finish the season strong. There is a new rule. It used to be you're not allowed to look for your new head coach until the season fully ends, but now you can look for your head coach 2 weeks early as long as you fired your coach in season. Nathaniel Hackett is just the 3rd coach to be hired in his 1st season, joining Urban Meyer and, another coach from, like, the '60s. I forgot who it was. So, definitely not great company to be a part of, but it felt like it was an inevitable thing, and all we can hope for is better days ahead. Tampa Bay at Arizona. Arizona, we talked a little bit about it. Tampa Bay able to squeak out a win in overtime. I believe it was 19-16 final score. Just a really kinda ugly game, but Tom Brady did just enough in the most crucial moments. So I still believe in Tom Brady. I don't even believe in Tampa. I just believe in Tom Brady to maybe will some wins, but I'm not sure why at this point because Arizona, I've talked to some people that are really like intimately involved in uh, this organization. They know everything, like the way I know the Broncos, and they explained how bad the Cardinals really are. And you can make an argument that they're the worst team in the NFL right now, and they have an entire, completely uh, rebuild right in front of them. Like they are going to have to rebuild from the ground up. Everything's going to look different from the coach. Everything next year is going to be different. This is an entire rebuild, which is crazy. It seemed like just a year ago they had things moving in a really good direction. They were 8-0, and it just man, the NFL. It's here today, gone tomorrow. And our last game, the Chargers would clinch the playoffs with a win over the Indianapolis Colts. Chargers, Justin Herbert has just proven that he can overcome all the obstacles that a regular season will present to you. It can be coaching, it can be injuries, it can be Derwin James getting ejected. There's a lot of things you have to overcome to be successful consistently, and only the really great quarterbacks can make it look like everything's just all peaches and cream because that's Justin Herbert. Like this is not a very healthy Chargers team. They had the most players on injured reserve, and Justin Herbert broke his ribs, and he was averaging like 5 yards a pass. Like it was some really low number, and things were just looking like okay, we'll just chalk this season up. And Justin Herbert, he put the city on his back, or at least the part of the city that cheers for the Chargers. There's a lot of LA teams, but he was able to get it done just because he's that great of a quarterback, and he is he's gonna be a special guy in the league for a very long time, and he every time you watch him play, you'll see 1 or 2 throws, and you're like, "Hey, there's not there's only a handful that can make that one." Maybe some of the other stuff, I know people are like, "Herbert's overrated." It's like, "Dude, get over yourself." No, he's not. There's no reason for people to keep saying he's overrated. Like, he's not overrated. He hasn't even won a playoff game yet, and it doesn't matter. Like, that should tell you how people feel about a guy if he hasn't even won a playoff game yet and we're holding him in high regards. Because as a fan base and as critics and media, we're the first to be like, "Yeah, if you haven't won a playoff game, you haven't done shit." We're the first people to say that. So, if you're hearing a lot of people talk about a guy in high regards that has won a playoff game, there might be something to it. Kurt Warner, when how long without a Super Bowl? So you gotta remember this kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of great players that I mean, Rodgers literally only has 1 Super Bowl, so, it's really hard to win, especially in January, but look, the good ones, they get their team at least in position to play, and that's really, as a fan, what you want every year. You're like, "I don't care." I mean, obviously, everyone wants to win the Super Bowl, but the most important thing is that when the playoffs start and all the losers go home, I can still watch my team play, even if it's just 1 game, and that's what Justin Herbert did for the Chargers this year. So good on him. Congratulations. The Colts, total dumpster fire. Usually those Charger teams of the past just have some bad luck. No, totally. The Chargers, we have a phrase, me and Rick have a phrase, we call it chargering, where they like find ways to lose games. Philip Rivers. I mean, there's some really bad ones. I think one of them was against New England that they had no business losing. I mean, I just think I just don't think Justin Herbert is going to I think Justin Herbert could be better than Philip Rivers. I absolutely do. And I also try not to hold the present hostage because of the past. Like there's a lot of things that we're not used to, but that doesn't mean that we haven't entered a new era. And normally by the time people catch up, they're on a bandwagon because it's too late. Like you think how long was Buffalo bad? It took us, like, a full year to accept Buffalo, "Oh, Buffalo's a good team." Like, it took a while for people because Buffalo was bad for the last decade pretty much. The Chargers may be going in to a new era. Rich said how he likes the Chargers chargered, he likes it. I do too. I don't really like the Chargers. I'm a Broncos fan, but you gotta respect greatness when you see it. So those are all of our games. Don't forget that tomorrow we're going to be talking about all of Week 17 games, and boy, do we have! I mean, the stakes can't get any higher. It's win or go home. I mean, really, the playoffs. We talked about it. It's like the playoffs really don't start in January. They start like right now and last week because you're seeing teams get eliminated and clinching. You know that essentially it seems like some of these are playoff games. Like Tampa, Carolina, that's a freaking playoff game. Whether it's the most boring playoff game in the history of playoff games, like that game essentially is a winner go home game. So those were our game breakdowns. I did write down the playoff clinching scenarios for this week. There are a couple teams that can clinch something one way or another. Cincinnati clinches the AFC North with a win and a Baltimore loss, or a tie and a Baltimore loss. So Cincinnati needs a win, Baltimore needs to lose. Miami clinches a playoff berth with a win and a Jets loss, or a Miami tie and a Jets loss plus a Pittsburgh loss. So Miami kind of has a pretty good chance of getting in this week. All they got to do is win, and the Jets, they haven't been playing that great lately. Philadelphia clinches an NFC East division title with just a win or a Dallas loss. So more Philly. They clinched the number one seed and home field advantage, and the NFC's lone first round bye with a win. That's probably the most important one here. Philly wins, they can kind of turn the engines off for a couple weeks, and or I guess just 2 weeks. But this is a big one for Philly. Got to win, but I don't see Philly losing out and Dallas winning out somehow. So Tampa Bay, they win, they're in. It's simple as that. New York clinches a playoff berth with a win. This is the playoff scenario. This is New York Giants are they're 7, like I said. The Giants win, they clinch. If the Giants tie, they need Seattle to lose, Washington to lose. Or if they tie, they need Seattle to lose and Detroit to lose. Look, I don't even bother the ties because it just doesn't seem like that happens often enough. Uh, but here's what can happen. The Giants can clinch even if they lose if Seattle and Washington loses. Or if Seattle and Detroit and Green Bay loses, or Washington, Detroit, and Green Bay. So basically, you need all those teams. I mean, this isn't rocket science. You need all those teams that are, competing with similar records or the same record uh, to lose, and you need to win. And if you have a one-game lead, if all those teams lose, then you don't necessarily need to. Um, if you have the tiebreaker, then you don't even need to win because the best they could do is tie your record. So if you have a tiebreaker, then I mean the Giants are in good shape right now. They have a one-game lead over all of those guys. So I think the Giants might find a way to like get in. Um, I would like to see them not get in. I'm going to be completely honest. I would like to see the Giants find a way to screw it up just because I want to see better playoff football. And I think the playoffs would be better if somehow like Detroit and Green Bay could get in. Um, yeah, I want to see more competitive teams. I don't want to see Tyler Heineke. I mean, they benched Tyler Heineke. Like that's the big story that I just blew past. They benched him. And Ron Rivera, like, look, if you're benching your quarterback in week 17, like I don't want you in the playoffs. Like I want to see people playing in the playoffs that actually have a shot to win it all. It just seems like a waste of a spot. I would rather give it to, a Detroit team that could, pull one out of their hat. So those are your playoff clinching scenarios. Um, Witt, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but there was a player, I think he won the what do you call Walter Payton Man of the Year award last year. It was Andrew Whitworth. He's I believe the center for sorry, he was the center for the Rams last year, and they won the Super Bowl, and he retired. Well, the one thing that the Bengals lost, even though they didn't lose the game, is they lost Collins at right tackle. So they lost the right tackle for the season, and That offensive line was atrocious last year, so they finally got it fixed, but then Collins goes down late in the season, so close to the playoffs. It sucks, and they asked if Whitworth would come out of retirement. When he was 40 years old in his last season, he had a 86.1 PFF grade. I mean, that is really good. He retired while playing at an elite level, and they're asking him maybe if he would come back out, and he was like, "I feel like it would have to be some kinda conversation with the front office. We'd have to sit down and tackle." Yeah, right tackle, sorry. He's like, "We would have to sit down and talk about it and, shake off the old us," but he said, "I'll never say never, and I'm open to the possibility." So how cool would that be, especially if the Bengals win a Super Bowl? To win a Super Bowl as the Rams, beat Bengals, and then the next year play for the team you beat and win the Super Bowl. I mean, that would just be such a unique thing, so I'm tracking that. And then the there's 2 more things I wanted to go over. We have our top 5, and I wanted to also mention I'm seeing a lot of people angry about the Dolphins with the Tua concussion protocol he's in right now. Tua's in concussion protocol, and people are upset because obviously he had that head injury, and then they said, "No, it was a back injury." Then he played the next week, and then he hit his head again, and his fingers clamped up, and then we didn't see him for, I believe, 4 weeks, and the Dolphins were under so much scrutiny. The whole NFL was talking about, "What are we gonna do to get these players more safe?" And all of this stuff. They fired the concussion doctors. They did all of these dramatic things, right? And then after the Packers game, they're saying Tua showed signs of concussion, and they put him in concussion protocol. Well, they're saying that he didn't show signs of concussion during a concussion during the game. Now, now everybody's really mad about this, of course, but I want everyone to remember this is a scenario that the Dolphins are damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Here's the deal: if the Dolphins truly did not see any signs of a concussion from Tua during the game, and after the game was over, Tua showed signs of concussion, the right thing to do would be to not hide it or cover it up so he could play. The right thing to do is when nobody knows about this and when the lights aren't on, this isn't on national TV. This was totally voluntary information coming from Miami, almost as a a statement, or so you could have like confidence that they're doing the right thing behind closed doors, right? Hey, I want everyone to know that Tua wasn't feeling good after the game, and we're gonna put him in concussion protocol because of what happened earlier this year. And everyone's like, he played with a concussion, right? Everyone rips his head off, and then if he doesn't put him in concussion protocol so that he can play next week, I mean, then he truly is doing the wrong thing. So sometimes as fans, this is just life. Like there comes a time where you have to look at things sometimes and understand that no matter what, people are going to argue. And there's no way to win this because people are so mad about what happened earlier. They're carrying that over into this. I mean, people are going to be upset if Miami, even if they're doing the right thing by, putting him in the protocol just to be safe, people are going to be mad at you. So that's why you just do the right thing and let the rest take care of itself. All you can do is do the right thing. I don't know if he is doing the right thing, but it just seems like coming out of the locker room after the game, volunteering to tell the entire public this, just I don't know why he would do that just to, screw himself. It just doesn't seem like any kinda logical plan on my the way I think about it at least, so, hopefully Tua's alright. Obviously, I would love to see the Dolphins, whether they make the playoffs or not, I wanna see them compete with their best players. It's not fun to see, people lose out in the playoffs in the last couple weeks because they weren't healthy. So now we're gonna go into my favorite segment, and this is gonna be the closer right here.
Top five, no debating. Top five,
Top
top five,
5,
top
top
five.
5, top 5. Top 5, top 5, top 5. Rick couldn't be with us. He took in his family back and forth from the airport. super, super busy, but I was definitely sure to get his top five, top five, top five. So I'm going to go from 5 to 1. Rick has at number 5, he has the 49ers. Um, he's not here to defend himself. So all I'm going to do is go through the teams. I may say a little bit about mine, but you're going to have to wait for tomorrow's episode for him to defend himself, and make sure you attack him in the comments if you don't agree. Hey, and if you do agree, let him know that too. We like to be supported. My number 5, I have the Chiefs right now. I think the Chiefs are definitely most likely always going to be a top 5 team with Patrick Mahomes, but there are just other teams I believe playing better football right now. And I don't think there was this many teams that were this good in the beginning of the year. But towards the end of the year now, we have ourselves quite a bit of teams that maybe at one point in the season, I look at my top 5 and I'm like, at any point in the season, any one of these people could be number 1. I'm just throwing that out there. So his 5 is 49ers, my 5 is Chiefs. He's got Chiefs at number 4. So just one spot ahead of me. At number 4, I have Cincinnati right now. I'm not gonna rank um I'm not gonna rank the Chiefs in front of the Bengals, because the Bengals beat the Chiefs the last 2 times that they played, and I have no reason to believe if they play again that um the Chiefs would win. I don't. I think I wouldn't be surprised by any means, but I just think the Bengals have been playing better complementary football. And if you look at the defense, what they did to Tom Brady, forcing what was it, 4 second half turnovers just in the second half, tied an all-time record for Tom Brady. The underrated story, people are caught up with the Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Burrow, like it's so easy to get caught up in all that and forget about the defense, who has been stepping up and playing pretty good lately. So I'm going to give them the respect they deserve. I'm put them at number 4. Number 3, Rick has the Eagles. He's got the Eagles at number 3. Um, Eagles take a fall off his list because see, I'm mad about this. I'm like, they took a fall off his list because I guess maybe their defense gave up 40 points, but it was really those turnovers that the Cowboys turned in. Whatever. I think the Eagles at 3 is a fair place to have them. I really do, because at 3 I have Buffalo. I got Buffalo at 3 because of all the reasons I've already said. Buffalo can win it all this year. It just there's a couple other teams that might get in the way, and that's who I got ahead of them. So he's got Bengals at number 2. So Rick jumping the Bengals from 5 all the way to 2, and I actually had the Bengals at 2 last week, and I dropped them down to 4. Not a huge drop. It's just I'm feeling pretty good about Buffalo after the way they ran the football. This is my one vulnerability on Buffalo, and they fixed it. So I gotta show some love there. At number 2, I have the Eagles. I think the Eagles are the second best team, and they might be the first. I really think it's like 1A and 1B. Um, and we'll talk about it here. He's got number 1. Rick has the Bills. The Buffalo Bills, Rick has is the best team in the NFL. Now, Rick just got to see the Bills up and close because they played the Chicago Bears, who is his favorite team, and they kind of uh, beat him pretty good. So maybe that's why the big jump. We'll have to ask him tomorrow. But anywho, the Bills can always be number 1 in your power ranking. And matter of fact, the Bills were number 1 in my power ranking from like week 1 all the way to like week 12. They never moved because the Bills. I don't think the Bills got much worse. I think other teams got so much better, including my number 1, the 49ers. The 49ers are scoring 35, 40, 37. They're scoring a lot of points, and they have the best defense in the NFL, which means they don't have to score a lot of points. They could score 20 points in these games and win, but they're not. They're scoring double that. And I think going into the playoffs with CMC, I mean, Kyle Shanahan is having a field day. Debo's going to be coming back. They're not even playing like with Debo. Like This isn't even the ceiling yet. And Brock Purdy, we were like, oh, they're going to get more film on him. That's what, the naysayers said. When they get more film, he's going to digress. They got more film and he's impressed. He's getting better and better the more he gets dressed. So as long as he's slinging it for the 49ers, the NFC should be stressed. Bars. But I'm not kidding. The 49ers are going to be really, really good. I think they could win the whole thing. I think they could be your Super Bowl champion. I think Brock Purdy could go down as the greatest single story in sports history. History. Ever. A rookie. It's not just a rookie. Like, the odds have never been more stacked against you. Rookie quarterbacks, no experience coming into a game. I don't care if you're a late first round pick. Could Jordan Love even do what Purdy's doing right now? Could he? I mean, he didn't look like it last year, and that's not even fair to say because this is his third year and he finally looked decent. But we saw him play the Chiefs last year in his second year, and he looked bad. Brock Purdy, rookie, 7th round, almost undrafted, looks like a top 10 quarterback. Dare I say it? I'm just believing what my eyes are telling me, all right? So let me know what you guys think. Go ahead and comment on this video, share it, like it. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't. We really appreciate all the momentum that we've been getting lately. You guys are making this so much fun, just being a part of this. Once again, thank you for all of you that came over from Tom Grassi. Tom Grassi is such a real one for putting you guys on, but more importantly, what he did is he put us on. So thank you for that. All of you have been involved in this podcast and this show in so many different ways, uniquely. I just wanted to say thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Richard said, nah, he looks good. And Tyler said, all thanks to Tom Grassi for bringing me over here. I appreciate that, Tyler. And yeah, dude, Brock Purdy looks really good, and it's just we've never seen anything like it. So it almost feels like we're waiting for him to fail, but I don't want to hope that on a person. Like I hope that he just continues to play the way he's playing and he wins the Super Bowl. That is, or if he loses, I want to see him lose in the NFC Championship to the Packers, like in a really, really good freaking game. A game so good that next year Brock Purdy's your guy. That's what I want to see. That'd be the best case scenario. But all right, you guys have been freaking awesome. Thank you guys. Tyler said you're going to stream the Packers Vikings game this week. Absolutely. The Packers Vikings game. That's a playoff game right now. So I'm going to be, yeah, those are the important ones. Packers Vikings. But he said, it's the coolest story out there, and take care, bro. Absolutely. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, you guys can find Packers Vikings this week on Star 6 Media. I'll be streaming that game wearing my freaking Packer glove. You know that I'll be hyped for sure with my Jareer Alexander. Jareer, freaking Pro Bowler. Yeah, dude, and I'm going to wear my glove because I put the glove on for the first time during the game, and one play later, they got the game-sealing interception. So there's something to the glove, and I think I can't just wear it the whole game. I can only put it on when it's in a critical moment, 4th down, stuff like that. So definitely tune in for that. And Tyler, Rich, thanks for tuning in. Everybody else, Legendary Pest Control was in here for a while. Aaron, all of you guys have been amazing. And I hope you guys have a happy. I'll see you tomorrow. See ya.